Mm-hmm.
So I guess the kind of the next thing is after this was kind of your childhood. You lived through the Great Depression. You lived through World War II. You also have kind of an amazing story during your your college years as well, where you met a Sikh Indian man and you fell in love and you got married. So can you speak a little bit to what it was like meeting Nanaji and kind of how you that happened? The story there.
Well, I was I had a roommate from the Philippine Islands, and she was working on her English degree at SMU,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a small group of foreign students
Mm.
that were going to school at SMU at that time, and they're from all different countries. And she was, they had a foreign students club there, and they used to meet pretty often, and she sponsored me as a member.
Oh,
So I started
wow.
going and met that's how I got to know all the foreign students.
Mhm.
And they were from everywhere, like Egypt, Jordan,
Wow.
Lebanon,
Uh-huh.
and they just became like my friends in
Yeah.
Syria, and it was wonderful.
Mhm.
And so Ike, my husband,
Mhm.
was studying in California at that time, and then he came for the summer to take a job to promote a restaurant in Dallas for it was an Indian restaurant, it was a steakhouse,
Yeah.
and he was there as to be a greeter and kind of promote the restaurant with his
Yeah.
turban, and he wore a fancy Indian costume,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he was going to school, and at night worked there.
Mhm.
And after we were at a Catholic party, actually the first time I met him,
Uh-huh.
and it with my roommate from the Philippines was Catholic, and she'd invited me,
Yeah.
and he came with a friend of his after work,
Uh-huh.
and they came in, and with his turban and his high collared navy jacket,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all the girls were all like, oh, like they thought he was Prince.
Yeah.
But I already knew he was coming, so I knew
Uh-huh.
all about him.
Yeah.
And he sat across the table and started talking to me.
Yeah.
And we all were going to go see Bawana Junction.
Okay.
It was showing in Dallas with
Uh-huh.
Ava Gardner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we all to go to that the next day.
Yeah.
And we were all going to pick us up, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden my roommate couldn't go, and the others kind of didn't go, and he picks me up.
Oh. Uh-huh.
So it was kind of a unexpected,
Yeah.
And so he started calling me, and we'd go out some.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah, and so I guess another question about that is that obviously was not a very common thing to have that a kind of an interracial couple, especially this would have been the 1950s, I believe, when you met. So what was that like? Did you have any people where there seemed to be kind of some prejudice or that kind of thing?
Actually, no.
Really? Really?
It was, he was the type of person
Mm.
he was very, I guess you'd say, Americanized,
Mm.
because he had grown up in the Punjab, and they had a lot of English
Yeah.
influence there,
Mhm.
and spoke good English, and were
Yeah, yeah.
educated.
Mhm.
And he also met people really good,
Yeah.
and the Americans loved him,
Yeah.
and they invited him to their homes. They
Yeah.
invited him to speak at all the men's clubs, chamber of commerce, women's
Mhm.
clubs,
Yeah.
schools,
Mhm.
and he was a dynamic speaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he met Americans really well and made friends.
Yeah.
There was no problem.
Wow.
Even my family liked him.
Yeah.
Even my grandparents.
Yeah. Even they really just took to him.
Yeah.
And so was that kind of an interesting thing though, just raising 5 kids in this interracial household, with him?
Actually, no.
Really? Yeah.
I don't think so. We
Uh-huh.
never had any problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the children all are beautiful.
Yeah, of course.
And unusual, and they fit. They're just kind of been kind of special.
Mhm.
And we've had a lot of. He was and pictures in the paper different times, and if we were out to dinner on eating, sometimes we'd have our pictures would come out in the paper. You know, he was well known in Dallas.
Yeah. And I guess, could you speak a little bit to that? How he was very well respected, kind of a founding member of the Indian community in Dallas.
We started in our living room.
Yeah.
And now there are 250,000 members.
Wow. Wow.
From all over India, and he's still honored as a founding member, and they have. He was also active in sports.
Yep.
And even in India, he was captain of his tennis team in college. And he played tennis with H.L. Hunt's son, Lamar Hunt, and they were very good friends. And he was active in cricket. He started a cricket club in Dallas, and he organized golf tournaments. And they still have one in October in his honor, and they call it the Iron Ike Golf Tournament.
Yep. Yeah. So, kind of moving on from that, I think one of the most amazing things that you have lived through, you've lived through all of these different things, but you actually were present at the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Could you tell a little bit about that? And then I know my mom was also, she was just a baby, but she was also present.
Well, we knew he was coming to Dallas, and my husband just adored him. And he left early to go to work that day, and went by the airport where President Kennedy came in, and he went there, and they had a fence there in front of where the plane came in, and he was there and saw President Kennedy when he came first came to Dallas and came from the airport, and he said he made eye contact with him and smiled at him.
Wow.
And then I said I wanted to see him too, and so I had gone to where I knew he was coming in to speak at the Trademark. And so I went in my husband's little, he had a 55 Ford T-Bird convertible. So I had Erin's mother, and she was a baby, and she was in the car seat, and I had her older brother and sister in the convertible with me. And we went early so we could get a spot to see the president come in to speak at the apparel mart. Or Trademark. And we had a perfect spot right up at the Velvet Road. They had, and there were two big press buses right across from the road, and there were a lot of people right up at the road waiting to see him come in. So we were perfect spot to see him. If he had come, they were supposed to come right in front of us, and we would have got to see him just right there. And then they started. They got news of the shooting, and so they started crying and screaming, and there were a lot of the Irish Catholic people were there, and they had I guess they got it on the radio and the news, and then you could see the highway coming around that was going to come to bring them to the apparel mart. It also went to the hospital, so we could see on the I-35, the highway, and you could see the convertible carrying President Kennedy and Jacqueline, and you could see her kind of leaning over him, and they went straight on to the hospital, and then everybody started leaving, and then on my way home I went by my way was going by the hospital, and you could see all the ambulances and all the people, and we went straight home from there, and we started listening on the radio and the TV.
It's just
it was terrible.
A national tragedy, and just you were present there, which is just it's amazing. But in that same kind of time period, that's when we also had a lot going on with the Cold War and with Russia and all of that. You also, you were here for the moon landing. So could you talk a little bit? I know that I think that you did like a moon landing themed birthday party for one of the kids.
Yes,
at
for
one
my
point.
for my oldest son Punjab. Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about what that was like? Did you get to see it on television?
Yeah, that was all on television.
Yeah. And what was that like?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, and then I remember too that the birthday cake I made.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and that was also just kind of a big moment in the Cold War. Do you remember anything else about that? Because I know that there was kind of that was a big thing too. There was really a threat during that time period.
well, yeah, it was. You know, it was with all the atomic bombs and all the scares people. They had drills at school for the kids. You know, they'd hover in the hallways and. That too, because of the Bay of the Pigs, when we were kind of afraid then, and they had when Kennedy was still in office.
Yeah. And I guess just talking kind of a little more in general about you. Now, could you talk a little bit about kind of what you were able to do during that time period? Because there weren't as many opportunities for jobs and things for women during that time period. So what kind of jobs did you have over the course of your life, you know, before you kind of settled in as more of a homemaker and things? What kind of opportunities were there for you?
There were a lot, but they didn't pay very much.
Yeah.
And I worked as a secretary, and then I worked for my brother has opened a bank close to our neighborhood, and at that time I was in real estate, and he asked me to hostess for open house at this bank that he had built in our neighbor, not far from our house. And I hostessed for 2 weeks, and we had a lot of school children come because we had a lot of art and paintings. And there was something for the school children to come and see, and I did that, and then they hired me as secretary to the president. So then I started working for banks.
And did you how long did you do that for?
I ended up working for the banks and became an officer. Probably about 7 years, I guess.
And after you got married and started having the kids, did you do some more work with like Nana G's restaurant or all of that?
Yes, he had. He went in restaurant. It's actually a restaurant club business, and it used to be a private businessmen's club, and it was membership only. And then he made it into where anyone could come, and it was on the 10th floor of Merchant State Bank, and it had. It was a beautiful facility, and it had private parties. We had a lot of sorority and fraternity parties there. And that was very popular because it's close to SMU, and it was very popular for wedding receptions. And by the way, he did the wedding reception for one of Henry Wade's daughters.
Wow. It was a high profile.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So we're